A man of Nisapur. The historian Ibn Athar relates, told me that he watched, hidden in a house, through an opening. When the Mongols appeared to kill someone, they cried each time, Allah Ilahi, in mockery of the Muslim cry. When the massacre was over, they led away the women after pillaging the houses. I watched them mount their saddles. They laughed, chanting in their speech and shouting, Allah Ilahi. So great was the dread that Allah put into all hearts. Ibn Athir continues, things happened that are hard to believe. Someone told me that a Tatar rode alone into a village with many people and set himself to kill them, one after the other, without a person daring to defend himself. I heard also that one Tatar, wishing to kill a prisoner of his and finding himself without a weapon, ordered his captive to lie down. He went to look for a sword with which he killed the unfortunate who had not moved. And, well, that's another difference these people had with Islam, is that they, would willy-nilly kill the prisoners. Someone said to me, I was on, the prisoner of war. I was on the road with 17 other men. We saw a Tatar horseman come up to us. He ordered us to tie up our companions, each man to bind the other's arms behind his back. The others were beginning to obey him when I said to them, this man is alone. Let us kill him and escape. They replied, we are too much afraid, but this man will kill you. I said, let's do for him, and perhaps Allah will preserve us. Yet, by my faith, not one of the 17 dared do it, so I killed the Tatar with a blow of my knife. We all ran away and saved ourselves. The systematic slaughter went on, and the Muslimin began to whisper that Genghis Khan was a scourge of the supernatural, an implacable being, the accursed. From one city, all the inhabitants were laid out, separated into groups, and told to bind each other's arms. When they were all trussed up, the Mongol soldiery surrounded them and killed the masses with arrows, men, women, and children, without discrimination. And, that's the second. The Muslim people are not allowed to kill the non-combatants. By non-combatants, I don't mean the government officials who have supported the oppression and the killing. That's a little bit different. Then the Mongols retrieved their arrows. The prisoners taken at the siege of Bokhara were not slain. They were conducted to Samarkand and tied in groups to be driven toward the walls to form a human shield for the first ranks of the Mongol attack on that city. And the captives of Samarkand were led off to serve in the assault of Urgench, the city of Khwarezm Shahs. These captives were driven to the task of filling up the ditch around the great city, and then to undermine the walls. The Mongols stormed the walls and fired the outer quarters of the Muslim metropolis with naphtha, but the multitudes penned up within the city defended each street until the Mongol dead lay piled between the buildings. The Mongols then drove their horde of captives to dam the Amu River that flowed past Urgench and divert its course. They forced their way into the streets from the bed of the river, and the defenders of the city surrendered. These survivors were driven out into the fields and separated into 3 groups. The artisans and skilled workers were sent east to labor for the conquerors. Young women and children were kept to become slaves. The rest were killed methodically. The chroniclers say that each Mongol soldier put to death 24 of the inhabitants of Urgench. They were about 50,000 Mongols at this siege. There were about 50,000 Mongols. Many Muslimin had hid themselves among the ruins and the piles of the slain. They did not escape because the Mongols destroyed the dam before leaving. The river waters flooded the ruins, wiping out all traces of life. Here the chronicles relate the two eldest sons of Genghis Khan quarreled. Juchi, the firstborn, wished to keep the city undemolished, since it might belong to him thereafter. Chagatai insisted that no city could be spared after causing the death of Mongols. Urgench vanished in actuality from the face of the earth, and 2 centuries passed before the Amu River found its way back to its old bed, flowing again to the Sea of Aral. Rumbly the tumbly here. And at times, after the Mongols sacked a town, they rode off only to appear suddenly a few days later to put to death the survivors who had returned to the ruined houses. So, the people of Islam who lived throughout the terror learned to avoid all town sites, leaving them to the scavenger birds and dogs that fed for a while on the decaying bodies. And hopefully, hopefully we can learn from this too, that we need to unite as people to have a good government, because a good government that could have prevented something like this. Along the belt of the Arabic-Iranian civilization, 4/5 of the population was eradicated. The slaughter was methodical, without evidence of a sadistic torment. At times, men who were known to have wealth were tortured to make them give up their treasures, whether real or imagined. No towers of skulls were built as monuments to the Mongol terror. Genghis Khan deliberately turned the rich belt of Islamic civilization into a no-man's land. He put an end to the agricultural working of the land, creating an artificial steppe here on the frontier of his new empire, making it, he thought, suited to the life of his own people. The way back, from the years 1218 to 1222 of the Vulgar era, his Mongols overran the southwest of the known world with meteor-like rapidity, over the Pamirs, through the long fertile valley of Samarkand, into the heart of Persia, along the Persian highways, to the unlooked-for waters of the Caspian, the Mongol called the Sea of Ravens, on to the good grass plains beyond, and the cities of Tabriz and Mosul, doubling doubling back past the snow peaks of the Hindu Kush, through the bare heights of the Afghans, down to the river Indus. 2 of his divisions made an incredible march up through the gorges of the Caucasus, breaking the armed resistance of the warlike Georgians. They debouched into the Russian steppes, where the wandering Kipchaks, desert peoples, had been looking for them to appear from the north. They drove the Kipchaks back to the lands of their ancestral enemies, the Russian princes. At the river Kalka, the Mongols swept over the stalwart soldiery of the Russian princes of Kiev and Galicia. They turned south to raid the Crimea, and then were recalled by an order of the Khan. They turned back reluctantly across the steppes, over the old road of the barbarians, the route of the Huns and Turks, scattering the Bulgars, dwelling along the Volga, and the Kankali Turks of the Ural. They brought back with them a wealth of horseflesh and precious things, and tidings of the rich grazing in the Russian steppes. One of them, the Tumanbashi Subotai, left With a determination to return and invade the unknown West, Subbatai, called Bagatur the Valiant, had hunted the Khwarezm Shahs into the Caspian. Now he had set his mind on returning to ride into Europe beyond the Danube. Throughout this havoc, the youngest son of the old Mongol appears, Tului the Mir, as the most daring spirit of the Ordos. It's almost like a Buddhist thing, right? Either you're the Mir or there is no Mir, or those koans. Koan. It's a poem riddle thing. To him was given the task of destroying great cities with the stone casting and fire throwing machines that the Chinese engineers had brought from the east. This fire artillery, in which gunpowder may have been used, added to the terror of the Mongol assault. Tului, seated on a golden throne, directed the storm that never ceased until a walled city was taken. To the Mongols who served under him, he became the incarnate spirit of victory. Once the military strength of the Muslimin had been broken, Genghis Khan turned his mind to the future care of the new lands. He left his 4 sons and generals in command of the divisions of the army, and even established a school of war for young Mongol officers, for he was determined to keep the control of his vast conquests in the hands of the Mongol Ulus. One commander, Shiki Kutiku, who had endeared himself to the Khan as a boy when he had tracked and slain a herd of deer for meat during a heavy fall of snow, had been defeated by Turkish horsemen in the Afghan hills. This had been the only check to the Mongol invasion. Genghis Khan received the defeated general without anger. Until now, he said, Shiki Kutiku has always been successful. He's become too accustomed to victory because he has never known the cruelty of misfortune. Now he will be more cautious, and in his pursuit of the Turkish army, which he broke up later on the banks of the Indus, Genghis Khan turned aside to examine the ground where his general had been worsted. Here he blamed the young Mongol commander severely for choosing a bad position for combat. After the passing of his armies, the Khan gave order that all fighting should cease. No men could take up arms or the Mongols ruled. This nomad peace, terrible but effective, put an end to the feudal warfare and the battles between princes that harried the Islamic lands before the coming of the Mongols. See, that's, again, the sectarian fightings rather than unitings. Behind the Mongol Tumans appeared the organizers of the conquest, Mandarins of Cathay, to take the census of the survivors, Uyghur secretaries to write down the lists of human beings and houses and cattle herds, the Dadargashis to administer the new roads, and the courier post that carried news to the Mongol homeland. This nomad government of the old Mongol, devised in the heat of his campaigning, accomplished the 3 things he desired: an orderly peace, the collection of wealth, and the communication with his steppes. An empire, Yeliu Cha-U-Tse said, has been conquered in the saddle. Genghis Khan was intensely curious about the Muslim world and the nature of the new lands. He tried to find a direct road home through the passes of the Himalayas, across the Tibetan plateau, the shortest way. Wisely, he turned back from the snow of the higher passes, realizing that no army could cross the roof of the world. With miraculous skill, he led his Tumans back in safety toward the long road of Samarkand. In Bokhara, he questioned the strange readers of the Quran about Islam. the religion of his enemies. He agreed that the teachings of Muhammad were good, except for the pilgrimage to Mecca. Why should men go to one place and bow down when the sky stretched over all the earth? He can see no sense in that. Well, they should have explained that the whole earth is the place where people bow down and prostrate unto God. But he accepted the teachers of Islam from taxation. He was not making war against a religion, but he felt in these callers to prayer and these ascetics who could govern crowds with a word, a strength that he did not understand. Here was a force that could control men, and it was useless to try to slay it with weapons. He had the arch-shaman Gyukchu killed, but there were thousands of other shamans, wizards, who might or might not be able to summon to their assistance the power of the Kalets, the strength of thunderstorms, even the lightning of the sky itself. Could they do so? The old Mongol did not know, but he pondered this dark, intangible force that was in its way, as great as that of his Tumans. With ghostly fingers, the fear of the old ice entities touched his mind. He felt his body weakening with age. He did not have much time to decide this vital question. Was the power of the shamans and priesthoods greater than his own? Could he destroy this danger, or must he conceal it? Or must he conciliate it, shrewdly, warily, winning it over to aid his 4 sons after his death? Could this power perhaps prolong his own life? He did not know, but he wasted no time in trying to find out. He had questioned the Muslim speakers to heaven without finding them dangerous. Now, he remembered that his commander of the left wing in China had reported that he had encountered certain reverend ones, Taoists, who might be speakers to heaven. From what you tell me, the old Mongol had answered, they appear to be truly speakers to heaven. Clothe them and feed them well. If you find others of the same sort, gather them together and give them the liberties of Tarkans. And Islam was not supposed to have a ascetic class, but people certainly claimed it. People who were poor wanderers just for the sake of being poor wanderers, and people who were professional priests when, it was supposed to be volunteer work of the people who just happen to know more Quran and more teachings to back it up, because when you have a lot of Muslims around, memorizing the Quran's typically not enough. Now, he sent for one of these mysterious strangers. In far-off Honan, a messenger of the Khan, wearing a gold tiger tablet of authority, appeared to a certain elderly and revered Taoist, Cha'ung Cha'un, saying, "Your name is esteemed by men, and the Khan hath sent me, a special envoy across mountains and lakes, to summon you, and not to return without you." And he repeated to the master Taoist the message of Genghis Khan, Yelayu Cha'u Tzai. The Chinese secretary had phrased it for the Mongol. "From the northern barons I have come, eating the food of common men, and wearing only one coat. The people who dwell in felt tents are my children, and their thoughts are mine, and mine are the same. When they struggle in battle, I am with them. In 7 years I have accomplished the task of conquering for them the forces of the world, and my supremacy is acknowledged. I have few talents, therefore I am fond of intelligent men, treating them as my brothers, and I fear that I am not able to rule wisely. To cross a river, we make use of rafts and poles. So to govern an empire, we must use the advice of wise men. Your sanctity is cloud-like above other men. You are separated from me by mountains and spaces of sandy deserts. Do not be afraid because of that. Think of the welfare of the people and come to my side and communicate to me how my life can be preserved." So Cha'ung Cha'un made the journey across Asia, finding himself to his embarrassment at one time in the company of 20 singing and dancing girls who were also being convoyed to the Khan's tent. In fact, they were attending on the Mongol conqueror when Cha'ang Cha'un entered the pavilion and stood without fear before the face of Genghis Khan. You, who obey no king's command, the Mongol said, have come to me. I am glad. Have you brought the secret that will prolong my life? Cha'ang Cha'un did not hesitate. There are ways of protecting life, he explained, but no elixir to preserve it. This frankness pleased the Khan, who ordered food and drink to be given to the ascetic. It is not my will, Cha'ang Cha'un said boldly, but by the will of heaven that I have come. Well, certainly something other than oneself gives the means, right? The old Mongol could appreciate this. Here was a power without fear. Engrave his words on your hearts, he told his sons, for they are worthy to be meditated upon. Nor did he show any anger when Cha'ang Cha'un made clear that to live to an advanced age, a chieftain should sleep alone at night, not in the arms of painted girls. By painted girls, he means women without wrinkles. Hopefully. Nor should he destroy... Well, definitely not with children, even more so with that, I guess. It's good that he's not doing that. Nor should he destroy life in others. As it happened, they were then on the return journey throughout the mountains, and the Mongols indulged in a hunt for relaxation. Although he was nearly 70 years of age, Genghis Khan rode in the hunting ring and was thrown from his horse when a boar charged him. The boar swerved aside and did not harm him. That was a sign of warning, the Taoist told him. You have done ill to take life. If heaven had not intervened, the boar would have gored you. The old Mongol thought this over and answered, I understood that myself. I know your advice is good, but we Mongols have grown accustomed from our earliest years to ride and hunt with arrows. It is not easy to change our habits. However, this time I have engraved your words on my heart. Oh, he could have encountered these words earlier if he... But sometimes you're, convinced over time, But 2 months later, he was in the saddle again hunting. It was not indeed easy to change his ways, but it seemed to him that Cha'ang Cha'un possessed no secret power, but still had to be conciliated, and he gave the aged Taoist a decree freeing himself and all his disciples from taxation and harm. It was best to have the support of the speakers to heaven in the conquered lands. With mutual respect, without yielding to the other, the aged conqueror and the ascetic parted, not to meet again. A greater foreboding preyed on Genghis Khan. They were marching back around the roof of the world, chasing the wild donkey and antelope before them. The distant divisions were being called in for reunion. After 5 years, they would see the home prairies again. His 3 sons came in to the great Ordo, the great Ordu, Tului, Chagatai, from his duty of mending roads, had just repaired a broken bridge of boats for Cha'ang Cha'un and Ogadai. Juchi, the eldest, rode in from the northern steppes, driving a gift of 20,000 white horses before him for his Khan. And to his sons, Genghis Khan spoke of the future. To destroy your own blood kin, he said, is to put out the fire on the hearth. I intend to give each of you a nation, but one must rule over others, and they must obey him as you obey me now. He said to Juchi, as well as the 3 younger ones, to Juchi, the firstborn and bastard born of the imperial mother, Potai, when she had been raped in a tribal raid. Genghis Khan had won her back, yet she had been delivered of her first son on the way to rejoin him. The men escorted her and made a cradle lined with the only soft stuff they had, fresh dough. This was to carry the child on horseback, and Genghis Khan, seeing her son for the first time in this fashion, had said, well, he comes as a guest. So they had given him that name, Juchi, the guest. The father had said nothing against Bortai, his wife, nor had he made less of Juchi than his other sons, because Chi had never forgotten the manner of his birth and had kept apart from the others. Genghis Khan had allowed him to go to the most distant land, the western steppes, but more than once Chi had clashed with the others in the war along the border of his new lands. Now, the three others had protested, hearing that Juchi was to be master of an ulus like their own. Is he to be like us, who comes from Merkit blood? The father heard them out in silence, and an elder Mongol, who was Chaghatai's advisor, answered them. You three were yet unborn, and every ulus was torn by strife when your mother was stolen. Since then, your mother has labored to create an empire. She brought you up, boys, hoping that you would be men. She was bright as the sun and strong as the deep ocean. How can you speak so of one who was like that? Juchi, however, did not stay after that with the Mongol, who was not his father. He left the great Ordu to go back to his steppes. When Genghis Khan summoned all the Mongols to a Kurultai, a general council the next year, Juchi did not appear. Instead, he sent a message that he was sick. Until then, no one had disobeyed a summons of the Khan. The old Mongol waited, without comment, until it was certain that his eldest son was not on the way to the meeting place by the mountain. Lakes. Then he questioned the Mongol officer who had brought the message. Is it true, he asked, that Juchi is too sick to ride? The Noyan, who had come from the north, answered with care. When I left his side, he was hunting. This, Genghis Khan understood, meant disobedience, and he could not pass it over. He gave command to his other sons to prepare to march north into Juchi's steppes to punish the rebel. Before they left the mountains, word reached them that Juchi was dead. Genghis Khan did not delay to mourn. In spite of all our expectation, he said, death will come. He turned back toward the lakes. The Kurilotai had been ordered and must be held, but he grew more silent then and did not go again to hunt on the march. On the homeward hunt, the far-flung units of the Mongols came together. Subutai appeared to give an account of what he had seen at the threshold of Europe. In the grasslands they met again, after years, to feast and to quaff mare's milk, when the minstrels chanted at the night fires. Here Genghis Khan held the council with his three sons, with his blood relations, and the Mongol Noyans who had served him. Outside the pavilion of the Khan stood the Mongol standard with the 9 yak-tails and the white falcon poised above them. The white bird with outstretched wings had seemed to Christian observers like a cross.